Hey, this is Madeline Sklar.
And Suze Cooper, and you're listening to All Things Audio. We are back.
We are back. We have so much to talk about today.
We do.
It's amazing.
We do. I mean, and that's the other thing with not doing it for a week is that you almost can't not do it for a week because there's so much stuff. It is still going at such a pace that there is always something new to talk about. I mean, we could probably just have filled up the whole of today's All Things Audio just on Spaces, Madeline, couldn't we? Let's face it.
Oh my gosh, totally. There's so much to talk about with Spaces today, which is great. You know, we got lots to discuss with it. Well, we're going to dive right in. We had breaking news from Twitter Spaces. Suze, like you literally just DM'd this to me 5 minutes ago?
I did.
That there's something going on with Spaces. It seems like they're very active on Wednesdays, usually during the hour that we're hosting this room, which I just find so interesting. That starting today, if you're on an Android, I know some of you here are on Android, you're going to start seeing more information in the space bar at the top of your mobile device with stuff that we take for granted with iOS, Suze, that we always see where, you can see who's hosting, you can see topics, who shared a tweet more. It says coming soon to iOS, but I look at the screenshot. I'm trying to determine what's different than what we already have because the screenshot looks like.
Well, it's definitely different to me. I don't ever get who's speaking in a space crop up on my space bar.
Oh, I see. Okay, yeah. Now that I'm taking a closer look at the screenshot, I see what they're saying. Okay.
So it's not just going to show kind of the number of people that are in that space and the title of the space. It's also going to be showing when someone is speaking, so when someone from a particular account is speaking, and also if someone has shared a tweet into the nest, I think, that will also show up on the space bar. I mean, to me, it's a great use of it, but I wonder how busy that top bar is going to get. I mean, it never gets overly busy with the number of spaces, I have to admit, that are up there. But equally, if this is going to start taking up the whole top of our space bar just for one space, we're going to have to rely on people swiping to see the spaces that are there an awful lot more. I don't know. What do you think of it, Madeline?
Yeah, I agree with you because in looking at the screenshot is taking up so much real estate, whereas if I'm just I'm going to go into my mobile right now and just go into the timeline, I can easily see, two of them and then scroll across from there, whereas this is going to take up the whole space. Are people going to still be inclined to scroll across? But I also feel like more and more people are using the actual tab for Spaces, the Spaces tab, where you actually get way more information. I find myself relying way more on the Spaces tab. It's so robust. It used to be, in the early days with Spaces, we had no choice, but the timeline was the only place where you could see the rooms. But it's still so limited, and I'm not even quite sure how it decides what we're looking at. Is it basing it off of the topics that we've already pre-selected just in the separate topic section of Twitter, is completely separate than I feel like the topics when we're hosting a room and we select 3 topics, that's integrated from their other feature where you can just pick topics to help show you more tweets in the timeline related to those topics. So it's still unclear to me because I guess so many things in here, they're still very NFT heavy, Web3 heavy, and I haven't really been... I have so many topics that I've checked off in the past couple of years that this feature has been available. And I don't understand why I'm not seeing other topics. I know a lot of people are hosting rooms talking about Web3 and NFTs, but it's just still unclear how are they choosing what we see in the timeline at the top. Whereas when I go into the Spaces tab, it is super robust and really feels like it's more of the topics I'm interested in.
Yeah, I mean, I also wonder, obviously they're trying to get more people into the spaces that are happening. And this is kind of one way, I guess, of doing that by highlighting who it is that's speaking. You might see someone that's speaking that you didn't necessarily know was in that space or that you might particularly want to hear from. But if you're seeing that on this particular screenshot, there are 3 screenshots, sort of mock-ups on this tweet that's in the nest at the moment. The one in the middle says Patel is speaking. But what that then loses is what the space is about. So I wonder if, then you've got to kind of click through to find out what the space is about. Is it a topic that you're interested in? I don't know. I mean, I'm happy that they're they're giving it a go because, as I say, anything that could potentially bring more people into spaces, I'm all for. But I just wonder whether it will really do the job it's meant to do. I mean, perhaps it's just that someone takes the mic and that flashes up for a few seconds and then it flips back to your usual kind of number of people in the space and the title. It's an interesting feature, and if anyone on Android has experience of it kind of in the next few weeks prior to me getting it on iOS, then we'd absolutely love to hear from you about it and see what you think.
Well, here's something that's so interesting. I just put a tweet in the nest. This literally just popped into my notifications while you were talking. And somebody's asking, is this a new Spaces tab? I think what this guy screenshotted, Marlon here, is, and I don't even think he's here. I think this is just coincidence because he tagged me with some other people. But he took a screenshot, and I bet he's on an Android because it's showing at the top, this TechCrunch just started hosting, and he's asking, is this a new Spaces tab? But it doesn't quite look like the screenshot we were just looking at. So I'm not really clear. But it's very interesting that Twitter is working so hard to find other ways of discoverability. And that we're big fans of that. That's a plus. If there are other ways we can easily find a room, we're all for it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, they've certainly lost no time in making a change then, have they? I mean, this is literally tweeted out 6 minutes from the Spaces account before we started this space. And already people are kind of questioning seeing something different on their phone. So, there's no hanging about with Twitter Spaces.
Yeah, and actually just now, Hosteline responded to this guy, Marlon, with the tweet I just put in the nest, because he's asking, is this a new Spaces tab? And Hosteline says yes, and referenced that Spaces tweet that we just posted showing that screenshot of what is going to look like. So it looks like we're seeing it in action. Of what this looks like for someone on an Android. So super interesting.
Yeah, and super hot off the press, as always. Here at All Things Audio, you heard it first.
Exactly. Well, we got so many. I mean, this was just the hot off the press news that we wanted to start with. But gosh, Suze, you have come up with so many things you've uncovered going back the last 2 weeks because we didn't have this room last week. So many different things to talk about. Lots of other Spaces news. I love how Alessandro Paluzzi is always coming up with interesting things to show us that Twitter is working on. And you shared this tweet with me that Twitter is working on stations for Twitter Spaces. What do you think this is all about?
Yeah, I mean, the reverse engineering magic is still alive. Alessandro shared this kind of, again, whether it's a screenshot or a mock-up, something that he's come across, showing how kind of larger cards, if you like, might appear on Twitter. Maybe, I don't know, I was going to say within the Spaces tab. That was just going to roll off my tongue, but it doesn't necessarily say that. But these are larger cards that are very thematic. So the one that I'm looking at here has got music on it, and it says Spaces and podcasts. About music, start listening. Entertainment news, Spaces and podcasts about entertainment news. Really interesting because I hadn't, until I read that out, realised that podcasts are included in that as well. Now, we've had a few weeks since we spoke about the fact that Twitter was interested in podcasts and was potentially doing something there. We haven't really heard much more about it. There's been kind of lots of other things around Twitter as a wider entity to discuss, I think. But yeah, this looks really cool. To me, it reminded me very much of what we chatted to Andrew about from Spaces Dashboard in terms of topics. Over on Spaces Dashboard, the last time we were here at All Things Audio, Andrew was talking to us about how you can now search for topics on Spaces Dashboard and it will throw up all the spaces that are tagged with that topic. Fantastic way of discovering spaces that you might be interested in. Now, I wonder if this is kind of the in-house version, if you like, and potentially it's another search engine within it that is basically giving you all the spaces that are tagged with music, all the spaces are tagged with entertainment news in one place so that you can start listening to them. I think what it might do is compile some kind of playlist, potentially. You might have a space and then a podcast and then another space and another space. I don't know. This is all just me thinking out loud. But yeah, again, another way of kind of grouping podcasts, another discoverability tool, if it becomes a real thing, because obviously sometimes these reverse engineering things, it's all behind the scenes. We don't know if it might come to fruition. But if it does, I think it would be quite a nice addition. to that kind of search engine that we're sort of missing, really, in terms of finding audio content on here.
Well, I'm finding it interesting that they're trying to come up with ways of incorporating other forms of audio and to have podcasts being available to listen to right through Twitter. These are like really popular podcasts. I recognize some of them, like the WTF and Dolly Parton's America. I've listened to those podcasts. So interesting looking at these screenshots and what they're working on. So we don't know much else right now. And when Alessandro Paluzzi puts up these types of tweets, it's just something he's uncovered from reverse engineering. It doesn't even mean it's being tested just yet, but it's what they're working on. So yeah, I cannot wait to see how this comes together, Suze. And while you were talking about this, sure enough, a bunch of tweets came into my notifications of more screenshots of this new feature for Android with the timeline uncovering spaces. David Gerbino put up several. Legion put up a tweet as well. So I just put those in. I mean, this is out and available to people on Android right now. I mean, David's put in several tweets where we can see. It's even showing us, Suze, it says Big Tent Social is co-hosting, and it shows us. So that's really interesting. And maybe later when we bring up people to take the mic, I would love to hear from those who do see this on their Android and hear their thoughts. Do you like it? Are you okay with scrolling more to see more rooms instead of having 2 or 3 to a screen? You got to just see one at a time. I would love to hear from others later when we're ready to do the mic request.
Absolutely. So the next thing that we're going to talk about is kind of new ways to start spaces here on Twitter, Madeline. There seem to be a couple of changes. I think one of them we had already spoken about because it appears in place of another feature that we were quite keen on, which is voice tweets. So what this is how to start a Twitter space from the tweet composer. So when you go to compose a tweet, you get various different options as to what you might want to do. You might want to click on the camera and add a picture, or you might just want to put your text in there. You might want to start a poll, add a GIF, all of those kind of things. Well, right in there, where the audio voice tweet little waveform used to be for that, we're potentially going to see the Spaces microphone icon, and people will be able to start a space straight from there. Madeline, what do you think of this one?
It's interesting. I don't like that they're taking away the audio tweet feature because that's normally the spot it's in. You and I are a fan of doing audio tweets. We even did a challenge at one point a while back. So does that mean that's going to disappear forever, or are they just moving that elsewhere? But this is interesting. I find it interesting that they're coming up with other ways to start a room. I don't know if I'm going to use this. I don't know yet. I don't know till I'm ready to get started. I'm so used to long pressing on the compose tweet button to set up a room. So I think it'll just take some time to get used to a change like this.
I'm sleuthing, and do you know what? I have zoomed in on that screenshot that we've got here in this tweet, and I can see that where the picture, the GIF, the poll, and the scheduled tweet kind of area in that lower bar there is a little waveform. So potentially that's our audio.
Oh, you're right.
Maybe that is our voice tweet. And actually all that's happened is that's moved down under the bar, and Spaces will just take up that bigger button, give it a little bit more visibility maybe. I think it's a great idea. I think it's good to have it there almost to remind people that it can be done. Although the number of people that we'd spoken to about voice tweets who didn't realise that was a feature, and that's, as you say, where it has been living in that left-hand button for a fair few years now. So, I don't know how many people it might sort of push to have a go to remind them that that's there. But I guess it's a good place to put it if they feel like they need a new route in to get more people to spin up spaces.
Well, I would have thought from the start that was the logical spot for it. Instead, I mean, getting used to long pressing, like that took a while to get used to that. Normally, you go to compose a tweet, and that's where you can do the other things, do a poll, just other items, do a GIF. But why couldn't we start a room from there? So interesting that I feel like they're kind of going backwards and going, what are other ways people could start a room? Let's make it super easy. So yeah, I think it's a great idea for them to do. I wish we could test it. I'd love to play around with that. I don't know anybody that has it yet, but But what I like about what Twitter is doing here is they're experimenting with a variety of ways to start and host your own room. Just like the next tweet I'm going to put in the nest here is starting a space from the retweet menu. Isn't that interesting? So if you're on a tweet where you would go to retweet, you could actually start a room and go discuss that tweet.
Yeah, I like this one. I do. I think this is a good place to put it because it's a great place to start a conversation that is literally off the back of the tweet that you've seen. What I hope will happen is that if you are retweeting and starting a space from someone else's words, someone else's share, that they are then notified in some way. So I don't know, Madeline, how do you feel if you've posted something amazing out during the day, one of your fantastic articles, and someone retweets it, but they start a space about it and you don't know about it?
I would want to know. So yeah, that would be the only thing is they would need to notify the person who wrote the tweet. Otherwise, I just think, like, why not give that person the opportunity to be a part of the conversation or at least go back and listen and know what was being talked about? So I think that's an important element to this. Don't you think? Like, wouldn't you want to know if somebody did that?
Yeah, I really hope that they do that. I mean, I guess, we all go to sleep as well. So there will be times when even if we're notified, we're not going to be around to put in, and say what we want to say about the thing that we have tweeted about. But I mean, as you say, both of these different ways of starting tweets, we've got this information from the @TwitterSpaces account. So these are things that are being beta tested probably by small groups of Twitter users if the way that they've done it so far is anything to go by. So there will be small groups of users that have got access to these features at the moment and are testing them out and trialing them. I really hope that at least a notification goes out. I don't know. I like it because it starts the conversation, and it's a sort of a good addition, I think, to the retweet. However, I'm just slightly uneasy about the fact that someone could go and do a whole space based on something that I've done, and I might not get to know about it or get to join in or even get the mic. Because if someone has started that space and you join it and you want to speak, they don't necessarily have to acknowledge your mic request just because it was your words that they've based this space on in the first place.
Right. That's a great point.
I don't know. I'm getting full of ethical issues here now. So, yeah, it feels like a good thing, but then maybe not such a good thing.
I know. So it'd be interesting to see like how that works in a test environment and will that work for people? Like, are they going to let the originator of the tweet be notified? What if, like you said, they don't let you in the room and they don't record the room? Then what? Then you don't even get to hear what they're talking about. And, somebody could take something you wrote and just totally turn it around and just not even give you the opportunity to talk about your side. So I don't know. It seems like there's pros and cons. I mean, I can still see other ways with that where it could be useful, but I don't see myself using this feature. I don't know. I don't look at a tweet and go, oh, I want to talk about this tweet. Let me go start a room in Spaces. And so moving on, there was a really interesting article, Suze, you and I had both read about, I think it was in the last week or so, talking about exactly what we're discussing here. It was an article put out, let me pull this up real quick, from Social Media Today.
Oh, yes.
Where Andrew Hutchinson it was almost like an editorial. I've been reading Social Media Today for many, many years, a great publication. Andrew Hutchinson does all the writing with anything that has to do with Twitter. And this felt like a really one-sided editorial about social audio, specifically Twitter Spaces.
Yeah, I mean, it hung off the fact that he was talking about these two features that we've just spoken about, starting the spaces. But towards the end of it just became a bit of a rant, to be honest. And I don't know. He's kind of put, I suspect Twitter's nearing the end of its roadmap for Spaces integration, and additions like this are a last roll of the dice to make it happen. I mean, he's clearly not a fan.
Right.
I don't know. It just felt very, very strange. And another thing that I picked up on was that he was saying there are no big spaces happening now. And I thought, hang on a minute. do spaces have to be big to be successful? Like, I'm not sure I'm on the side that says they have to be massive to be successful. I I think, an intimate group where you can have a decent conversation is really, really valuable. I'd far rather speak with our engaged community. And my goodness, as we've said time and again, we love seeing lots of you here week after week with us. That to me is the key to these spaces more than having thousands and thousands of people. I don't know. I kind of felt like he'd sort of missed the entire point of social audio in a way, which is, as you say, strange because I really love reading the articles from this publication. So, yeah, it was just a little bit odd. And I wondered, do we really think this is the last roll of the dice? I mean, a few weeks ago, we were wondering, what's going to happen? The whole Elon Musk thing, is everything going to slow down? I mean, that's certainly not what we're seeing, Madeline, is it?
No, not at all. I mean, and here we thought, when the whole Elon Musk thing first started, that they were going to freeze anything new from happening. They were even doing a hiring freeze. And I remember us talking here like, all right, don't expect much from Twitter Spaces, any updates for a while, while they're sorting all this out with these changes. But here we are talking about stuff with Spaces every single week, and they're still putting out features. They're still making updates. The app keeps getting updated at least once a week. So things are still moving forward with Spaces, and I just don't agree with this article at all. I think Spaces is still doing well. I think social audio is doing well. Yeah, it is a little different from the boom of it when all of this was first getting going. And, he talked about, the invite only with Clubhouse at first and how, and it was iOS and all. There was like, he felt like it was more alluring how it was like that, whereas I felt like once they opened it up to everyone, you didn't have to have an invite, Android people could get on board. I felt like that's when everything really exploded and everybody got the opportunity to jump on the social audio bandwagon and see how powerful it is. And we know not everybody's going to stay with it. Just like live streaming. I mean, people got really into live streaming in the early days, and then some people decided, I'm moving on to something else. It's not for me. That's okay. But for the rest of us that still do live streaming and those of us still doing social audio, we find value in it. You and I have built this awesome community here just from showing up each week to share the latest social audio news. So we definitely feel that this is a powerful way to connect with people, bring people together. If you're looking to build an online community, what a great way to do with social audio, whether it's here, Clubhouse, or one of the other social audio sites.
Yeah, and I mean, again, a neat segue into kind of our next story that we've got today, which is actually a thread from Morgan, who is a regular here in the All Things Audio space. And he's been saying that, he says, one way to gauge interest in Twitter Spaces is to track followers for the official Twitter Spaces account. And he shows a graph here from the beginning of the year in January, which shows a bar chart that raises over 15,000. And then it kind of goes downwards towards May. And you're looking at probably 9,000 probably in May. So it kind of gradually slows. So growth is slowing. New followers dropped by almost half in the last 3 months. He also, the conversation on this thread is extremely interesting. So Morgan puts a couple of reasons as ever as to why this might be. And I love his thinking. He's kind of saying potentially the NFT community being so heavily here over on Twitter, and then perhaps that bubble kind of bursting from April onwards has potentially had a knock-on effect. I mean, certainly there were how many hundreds of NFT spaces at one point you couldn't kind of move for them, and it certainly doesn't feel quite the same way as it did back then. Twitter did the whole promotional video around NFTs and the NFT community. It was certainly a community that they were going after being over here on the Twitter platform. So potentially that's a reason why. He also says, this is a rough proxy. You'd need to adjust for tweet volume. A drop in that would be independently interesting, but it tracks. And it's worth noting that slower growth is still growth. And then Simon Exceptional B, who is community manager, I think, at Twitter, has got a lot to say, really, around kind of social audio being at this kind of critical moment where everyone's trying to work out where it's going to go. I think we've always been trying to work out where it's going to go, but I think he's right in that there are certainly new features cropping up on different platforms. the independent apps are trying to really find what their focus is so that they can dig down deep into that. And people will decide where they spend their time and their listening time and their, joining social audio time, dependent on what the features are on each of the platforms. For some, it will be over on Amazon AMP. For some, it will be Spotify Live. For some, Clubhouse, with their new houses feature, perhaps that's, going to be the thing that really takes off and draws people over there, because that's something you can do over there that you can't do anywhere else. Equally, over here on Twitter, as we've always said, for us, our key point in being over here on Twitter is that our tribe is over here, our community is here. We've already got a fantastic base. Twitter offers that. None of the other platforms do. So really interesting thread if you're at all interested in the continual conversation about, social audio is dead, Clubhouse, what's that, etc. type headlines. This is the thread to read and really take note of, I think. What did you make of it all, Madeline?
Oh, yeah, it was a really interesting conversation. I really enjoyed everything Morgan had to say. And then having Simon jump in, who is the community manager over at Twitter Communities. That's meta. Community manager at Twitter Communities. And really interesting stuff. So, yeah, I find it, but one thing though is that I think is still subjective, like using a way like this to track followers. His original tweet about gauging interest by tracking the followers of the official Twitter Spaces account. I don't know. I always find stuff like that a little subjective, and I don't know if that's 100%, but he makes really great points here. So, and this chart he shares in his tweet is very compelling. So I find it interesting for sure.
Right, let's move on to Space's dashboard news. I know Andrew is in the space with us. Hello, Andrew. Hopefully you can come and talk to us a little bit more about this, because I don't have loads of information about it, but you did certainly tweet out one of your awesome videos about Space's breadcrumbs, which is very interesting. And your tweet there explains now you can see all the Twitter Spaces you have co-hosted and spoken in on your personal Spaces dashboard page. Now, we already know that Spaces dashboard is really out there, Madeline, isn't it? With, giving all the information we might need as a host. Andrew's worked so hard and listened so well to what the hosts have really been asking for, that it just does. It has an amazing kind of top 10. You've got a great vision of all the different spaces that are happening. As I say, we discussed the whole topic search last time, and now this as well. So the idea that I could go onto my Big Tent social dashboard page and see, all of the All Things Audio spaces, but also any other spaces that I've hosted, co-hosted, or even just spoken in, I think is, again, another great feature addition.
I agree. I love the Spaces dashboard that Andrew put together, and I love that he keeps adding features to it. So this is just another great feature. If you have not checked it out, we highly recommend spacesdashboard.com. Be sure to check it out.
Right, now we're going to talk soundboards, Madeline. I'm very excited about this.
Yeah, because we're not done with Spaces news. It just never
keeps coming.
Ending.
It just keeps coming.
There's just so much going on. But yeah, interesting tweet from host Celine. What do you make of all of this?
Well, I don't know if you remember, but a few weeks ago now, host Celine joined the space right near the very end of our hour. And we do try and keep All Things Audio to an hour. And generally we do quite well. But he joined right near the end and, as always, had a list of things that he wanted to talk to us about. And he kind of prioritised it, told us one thing. And then in the middle of what he was saying, he suddenly said, oh, and I could tell you about this. And then there was a kind of sound. And then he went, oh, but I don't have time.
Right.
And we kind of backtracked on it and said, oh, wait a minute, what was that? What was that? And he made the sound again. And we came up with, oh, hang on a minute. Is that a sound effect? Is that a sound effect that is kind of on Twitter as part of the app? And potentially, could this be a soundboard? And then last week, host Celine has tweeted out new Twitter Spaces feature alert, Spaces soundboard coming soon, ? And a screenshot, which I think is from Jane Wong initially. Again, another reverse engineering superstar. And this basically shows a whole load of emojis on a soundboard. There's the applause, the crying while laughing, no entry. There's a phone, a medal, a drum, all sorts of different emojis that you can only imagine what sound they might be about to make. But yeah, I mean, what do we think about this, Madeline? Is this going to be a good addition?
Well, I'm not a fan of this audio transformer. And, they've had this feature it was like one of the very early features Twitter came up with for Spaces, where you can change your voice. Now, for a room actually all 3 rooms that I co-host each week, they're informational rooms. I don't want my voice to sound different than what it really is in real life. And I certainly don't want people grabbing the mic and using, but I can understand for more playful rooms, fun rooms, I could see something like this. I was just surprised this was a feature they integrated so early on to Spaces. I gave them a huge laundry list of things that I wanted. When I was one of the early beta hosts, they asked, what things would you like? And I gave them a huge list. I would have never thought in a million years that something to change your voice would be so high on the list. But in looking at this tweet that host Celine shared, and we have it in the nest, so you guys can take a look at it too, it looks really interesting because you can really attach a visual to what each of these will be. And when in this example from Jane Wong, you can listen to the audio, it makes the sound of each, like a dog, it's a dog barking, and I was like, well, okay, that's interesting. So it's almost like a sound effect that you can add. And what's interesting in this screenshot of this video is in this example, it says soundboard, but then next to it is voice. And so far, this audio transformer has just been just for your voice, to change your voice. But now, if I had this compelling need to have a dog barking while we're talking, I could press on this from what it looks like. And the applause, I could see where the applause would come in handy. This makes more sense, having sound effects. But why don't they just call it sound effects? Why soundboard?
Soundboard's probably far more hip.
I like it when it says what it is. And in looking at this, when I can take the whole thing in, it's like, okay, this seems like sound effects. But yeah, soundboard does sound a little bit more cool and hip.
I mean, we were both agreed that the voice transformer was just not a good thing. So,
no.
And like you say, when you're having a discussion, there will always be someone who wants to come in and press the dog continually while you're trying to have a chat. I mean, I don't know. Yeah.
It's a good way to get booted out of a room. So only use it when the hosts encourage it. I would not be happy if someone grabbed the mic and started playing with these sound effects. And no, it's going to interrupt the conversation. I tell you what, any room that I co-host and somebody starts messing around and doing that, you're out of the room and you'll never be allowed back. Because that's juvenile.
Yeah, and in the early days, we did do that. I remember some of the early, even the early All Things Audio spaces when people kind of requested the mic, and we'd have people just playing music down the microphone, and it's just not the done thing. Really,
well, you're always gonna have that when something is new. I remember even before the whole video streaming video and live streaming was a thing. We're talking like 2010 when you had, or 2011 when you had Google Plus, that whole Google Plus rooms, and you could like live stream through Google. Yeah, I know Google Plus didn't really make it, but when it first came out, you could have a live stream with up to 10 people. And I was like, this is so cool. But guess what happened in the beginning of that? People showing up in these random rooms, they see the name of your room and come in and start doing all kinds of crazy stuff because they could. And it's like, well, let's see how much of a juvenile I can be in someone else's room. So it always seems like when something like this is new, you're going to have stuff like that happen. And then over time, people get over it and they realize if you're going to keep doing stuff like that, you're going to keep getting booted out. So what's the point? But people like to push limits when things are new, So yeah, I do remember in the early days of spaces that, in every room I was a part of early on, you'd always have somebody coming in and just messing around because they could. So we don't have that nearly as much. Thank goodness, because, we're here to share information and we want people to come in our room that want to speak and share information, come here to learn. But if you want to speak and share, we're all for it. But come on and play with these little buttons and soundboard and let's be annoying. Well, yeah, nobody's going to want you. So don't do it.
I guess the thing is, it needs to be under host control. And it needs to be under host control, not just as in when you set up the space, you can turn it on and off and decide whether you want it to be available to people within the space. But it also needs to be under host control as in if you've decided that you're going to use it in your space and then it gets abused, you can turn it off without killing the space, without killing anything else. You can literally toggle it off and it's gone.
That would be ideal, but you can't do that with the transformer the way it is right now.
No, you can't. And you also can't do it with the recording feature. So if you start a space at the moment and you've forgotten to record it on the platform, we don't have a toggle or any way of going back to record it. In fact, you have to kill the whole space and start again. And if you've been promoting a link for the last week and you've forgotten to toggle across record in the setup, you've got no way of doing that. So these kind of things, I think, need to kind of be thought through a little bit more. And certainly when it comes to something like, the soundboard, which could interrupt someone's space and kind of ruin the content, I think that there just has to be that level of ability for the host to kill it if they need to completely without killing their space.
Right, exactly. And here's an interesting comment from Sherry I just put in the nest, and this shows you the power of using this new interactivity we can do with the little comment box at the bottom right if you're on mobile. Sherry's response is the ability to change your voice in spaces is a bit different, depends on how it's used. And that's exactly the point. Like, how are you going to use this? And does it apply to the kind of room? The kind of room we're in, it just doesn't apply. You don't want to use a voice transformer at all. So I just thought she just brought up a really good point about it.
Absolutely. Well, just to kind of tag on to that, we also had a story about Reddit upgrading its live audio Reddit talk with a soundboard. So it's obviously one of those fads or feature fad. I'll call it a feature fad because, in the same week as Twitter Spaces is talking about soundboards, they're also talking about soundboards over on Reddit. So, it's obviously someone somewhere has asked for it.
Right, exactly. And now we got some Clubhouse news. We'll zip through some of these others real quick because, man, this hour is going so fast, Suze. We spent almost 45 minutes just on Twitter Spaces. Can you believe it?
I know. I kind of knew that we were going to be honest, but you're right. Let's whip through these last few. And then I can see we've got some people who've requested the mic already. And we'll come to you just shortly. So, Clubhouse feature alert, the emoji reactions. There are going to be these 10 different options of emoji that display for 30 seconds in place of your avatar over on Clubhouse. You can basically give 5 emojis in a row before a 20-second delay, and then you can do it all over again. But there's a selection of 10 different emojis, kind of a wider palette, if you like, than we've seen probably over there before, including the boom pow and the eyes, the skull. There's a few kind of more negative emotions perhaps being represented here than we've seen on other emoji boards, both here on Spaces and over on Clubhouse as well. There was that one from Clubhouse. We're going back to Twitter for just a second to speak about accessibility and audio, so not directly social audio, but there was a really interesting tweet here from Julius Eliasson, who has said that a new accessibility section has been released for charts. So if someone tweets out a chart, a bar graph, a bit like perhaps Morgan did earlier in the one that we were talking about, the Twitter Spaces growth, there's actually now a feature where the chart can be described using audio so that visually impaired people can listen to the charts, the numbers on the chart being pitched to different sounds, and the description of the chart will be available to them too. So another great kind of audio accessibility feature, but also useful for anyone that might need the chart kind of read out to them rather than having to have a sort of deep look at it. Telegram, Matt Navarra has tweeted out about Telegram. Telegram's one of those early ones that was using voice before everybody else, really, but everyone kind of forgets about. But they have announced that they're going to have a new voice-to-text messaging feature. So this is for those moments where a voice message appears and nobody knows what's in that voice message. Now, I know lots of people who don't necessarily like to get a voice message because you can't tell what's in it unless you listen to it. Now, the idea of this feature is that the voice message will be converted to text for those times when you don't want to listen and you want to see what it says. So I think that's one of the first apps that's really kind of coming up with that text-to-speech idea. Surely we've had speech to text. We've had speech to text happening in lots of different guises for transcripts using Otter, all of those kinds of things. But certainly in an app, I don't think I've seen as yet voice to text conversion. I wonder if WhatsApp might follow suit, because certainly my WhatsApp can get filled with audio messages that I'd quite like to see transcripts to before I listen through to them as well. And a final one is actually around Facebook. Now, we heard that Facebook were dropping podcasts. Audio is not a thing for Facebook. They are definitely not going into audio anymore, having made a huge fuss about 12 months ago about how they were doing audio. They were all in. They were definitely doing podcasting. Now they're not. But however, Meta has teamed up with Acast, which is a podcast hosting platform. And they're saying that creators that use Acast Plus, which is the sort of premium subscription level on Acast, they'll be able to offer listeners entry to subscriber-only Facebook groups. So the idea of this is really interesting when you think of it in kind of social audio terms. So we have our social audio room on Twitter Spaces and our community right here on Twitter Spaces. Now, what this essentially does is says, listen to our podcast on Acast and then go over to Facebook for your community and your group and engaging with other listeners, etc. So, it's cross-platform. It's kind of allowing Meta/Facebook to have a toe, I guess, in the water. There will be plenty of people that are using Acast Plus that will take them up on that, I'm certainly sure. But yeah, just an interesting one, considering the movement that Facebook's had between, yes, we're doing audio, no, we're not doing audio, yes, we're doing audio. So yeah, just another interesting one there. Now, I heard lots of speaker requests being approved there, Madeline. So where are we going first?
We have Andrew. Hey, Andrew. Thank you for joining us.
Hey, how are you both? Good show as always.
Thank
you.
Thank you for featuring breadcrumbs.
Yeah, tell us more about them.
Right, so one of the things we found was we were finding people who were looking at the dashboard and going, well, hold on, where am I? Because I co-hosted those spaces or I spoke at those spaces, but I'm not being celebrated. And we wanted to change that and recognise that. So essentially, we've gone back in time. And what we allow you to do is see all of the places that you've spoken in, all of the co-hosting that you've done. And to be absolutely honest, I really did this for myself because I wanted to see where I've been, what footprint I've left behind. And now that I see it, it's so fascinating. So when you find someone that you think's really good or interesting, you can click on them and see where they've gone. And then you can see where they've spent the most precious asset they have, i.e. their time. And you start to find and uncover and discover these amazing new hosts you may not have known. And what it also means is now everybody has their own, if you like, social audio resume CV, because it basically shows where you've been. So you may not have hosted spaces, but my God, you've spoken at a lot. And you've delivered value in a lot of spaces. And we think that's so, so important to recognise the speakers and the co-hosts.
But Andrew, now I'm going to have to be careful where I go.
In what respect?
Well, you may go some places you'd rather that people didn't know you were frequenting.
Well, you'll be speaking in, and that's the thing, you see. So you're either co-hosting, so then everyone in the audience
right.
sees it.
I'm just kidding you a little bit. I think it's a wonderful feature. Absolutely wonderful. Thank you so much for doing this. Thank you.
And what's really, really working so well is we've started then to spot some very interesting use cases. So we've had a couple of journalists basically who are looking at stories and they're saying, oh my God, now I can go back into the space and see who the speakers were and then contact them and say, hey, I didn't go into that space because it's not being recorded because after 30 days it goes. Do you remember what happened in that space, or can you give us some insight into what was being talked about? So it starts giving them a whole new area of leads they can follow. But then we also, again, this is alpha, we're also able to create daily and weekly leaderboards of who were the top speakers across the global landscape of spaces.
So this is basically only if you've taken the mic then, Andrew. So not if you're listening in a space, it is if you're speaker or hosting, co-hosting.
Yes, that's correct. We only work with whatever the Twitter API give us. So only if you've co-hosted or speaking, you now have your own personal dashboard. So before we'd have it and it'd say you haven't hosted any spaces, which seems so so cruel because you might have spoken in 100 slots. Now we recognise that and we say, here's all the value you're adding to the social audio landscape.
Great idea. Thank you so much. And thanks for coming on and explaining it to us and giving us a bit more information about it. Madeline, who was next? Was it George?
Yeah, George is next. Yep. Hi, George.
Hi, how are you? How are you doing? You asked for feedback on the, I don't know what you call it, the spaces attached to the tweet. But if I may, I'll be allowed a moment of I told you so. I predicted in this a few months ago that the innovation rate of spaces was going to increase awaiting the arrival of Elon Musk. And I think I've been vindicated, and I think it will continue. I predict that it will continue at an ever increasing rate because my belief is that the teams are going to say, holy crap, Elon's coming. He's going to want to see what we've been doing. And if we've been twiddling our thumbs for 4 months, we're going to be out of here on our ass. So we are going to make our mark on this and show him that his usual expected rate of innovation is happening in our team, and he'll keep our team. Speculation on my part, I think has been somewhat borne out, and I predict it will continue and increase. Now, on the issue of attaching sort of attaching a space to a tweet, I love that idea. I think it's going to happen more and more. I've actually put up several tweets and articles and threads and said, let's do a space associated with this, and have conducted spaces associated with a particular tweet or thread. And I think it's going to continue, but I think a lot of people will discover the short form space. In other words, 15, 20-minute spaces. So you'll see a tweet or a thread or an atomic essay, and you'll say, wow, I know a lot about that. I could talk for 10, 15, 20 minutes on that. I'm going to start doing that, see who else shows up, who else wants to ask some questions. We'll take 1 or 2 questions, bang, you're off. Now you've got a recording of it. And speaking of recordings, the third thing I want to mention is Audio Labs now has a kind of automatic feature. If you're signed up, that Audio Labs is the one where when you do a space, you can submit the URL and it will go on to your YouTube channel. It's now automatic. If you're signed up and you run a space and you're signed up with them, automatically that space will appear on YouTube a day or 2 later. I think you can cancel it. I'm not sure of the exact mechanics. If you're a host, you can go in and manually put in the URL of the space, and it will appear on your timeline, your YouTube channel. So I think that's phenomenal, and that's all I got.
That's a great use. Thank you for sharing that. Thank you to all of our speakers who came on and shared so much great stuff. And we're available in all of your favorite podcast apps. We're out there, All Things Audio. You can also go to allthingsaudiopodcast.com as well.
You certainly can. And you can catch us here on Twitter and use the hashtag AllThingsAudio, and we'll pick that up throughout the week. So that's it for this week. But thank you so much to everyone that's been here in the space with us and those of you listening. And we'll catch up with you next week.
Bye, everybody.